are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and today we have another show lined up for y'all. Today we have our special guest. She is a higher education consultant and author, has an amazing resume, the one and only Christina Carmelle Lopez. She is going to talk to us about her book that is coming out in January 2024, but you can pre-order it right now, Barnes & Noble, and anywhere you can get a book. The title of that book is Get the Degree Without Losing Your Mind, The Busy Student's Guide to Study Hacking. And man, first and foremost, Christina, you have an impressive resume. Just a little teaser of your resume is, I mentioned higher education consultant, but you do that at Deloitte. You also have over a decade of experience in higher education, former USA diplomat and experience at the U.S. Embassy London. You hold a master's degree in international relations. You also hold an MBA in international business. You are a prolific writer for newspapers, magazines, journals, and also including the Huffington Post. And as I take a breath, you still do a lot more things. You also are based in Los Angeles. So how are you doing today?
That's right. Thank you for that introduction. So I am a higher ed consultant for Deloitte. But before I came to consulting, I worked in higher ed for close to 2 decades in many different capacities. So I started as a college instructor. I then became an academic administrator at a law school, a graduate law program. And then all the while that I was working in higher education, many of those years, I was also a student. So I was getting my MBA while I was working full-time at the university. And, going through that experience of spending a lot of time in school, I think I have 4 advanced degrees at this point, but spending a lot of time in school, spending a lot of time teaching students and also working with students, it just made me realize how challenging it is to be a student today. And I realized when I went back to school to get my MBA that it was a whole different ballgame. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that I was no longer able to focus entirely on my studies like I did when I was in my 20s. I had a full-time job, a mortgage, and just a lot more distractions than ever before. And I think that is a common experience for any adult who is also trying to learn something new. If they're trying to pick up a new skill or get a certification or a degree, we are just more distracted than ever before. And we have this wonderful and terrible thing called social media that is causing us to lose our attention spans. And so attention spans are shrinking, and it makes it that much harder, I think, to learn and to study and to focus these days. So that was really the catalyst for this new book, Get the Degree Without Losing Your Mind. So I really hope that some of your listeners will be able to benefit from the knowledge in that work.
And before we dive into the book, I got to get the story of your experience being a former U.S. Diplomat. Yeah. And
yes.
How did that happen for you? And what was it like having that chapter in your life?
Sure. I would love to share about that. It was a really wonderful time in life, and I worked really hard to achieve that. In undergrad, I studied international relations, and then I went to graduate school. I got a master's in international relations. And all the while I was taking the Foreign Service exam. So the Foreign Service exam is how you qualify to be a U.S. diplomat. And I want to remind your listeners that, being successful is about iterating. And I don't like to think about failure. I like to think about iterating and becoming better and better and trying new things. And so I would encourage people to, if you want to do something new, just try it, try different things, get a better understanding of what you like, what you love, what you don't like. And so I took the Foreign Service exam right out of undergrad, and I was shocked that I passed the first portion of the exam, which is a written test. And then they invited me to come in for an all-day interview. It was one of those practical interviews where you have to do management exercises on the spot. You have a really intense case study interview. You have to do a simulation with other people around a table and negotiate. really fun, but really stressful. And I was, so young at the time. I think I was 20, 21. And so the first time I took that oral portion of the exam, I didn't pass, but it taught me a lot. And I thought, okay, I get it now. I have a good sense of what this is. I'm going to come back again and I'm going to pass this the next time. So I took the exam again when I was in graduate school. And then while I was a grad student studying international relations, I did an internship at the State Department in Foggy Bottom in Washington, D.C. And that was such a rich experience because I was able to actually meet foreign service officers who were between assignments. So typically, if you're a diplomat for the U.S. government, you spend your career overseas. That's at least 20 years working in various consulates and embassies around the world. So you'll spend maybe 2 or 3 years abroad, and then you'll come back to the United States for maybe a year or two to do training, and then they send you out again. And so while I was in DC that summer, I had a chance to meet these diplomats who were back home in the US from their assignments. And I learned so much from them. I would do these brown bag lunches where the facilitators of the Foreign Service exam would give you tips on how to take the exam. So, I think it's so important that any learner is soaking up knowledge from multiple places. So sure, I read all the books. Then I engaged in the experience of doing the test. And then I learned from the people around me and I asked questions and, I asked them about their job and their qualifications and how they got to where they were. And so I think part of being a successful learner and achieving your goals and dreams is having those multiple sources of input. And so when I took the exam again, I was thoroughly prepared and I really knew what to expect. And I passed. And it's a very small percentage of people that take the exam that get a job as a diplomat. So I think the stats, at least when I was going through the process, is 0.5% of people who take that initial Foreign Service exam actually get a job at the end of the day because the process is so rigorous. And passing the Foreign Service exam is just level 1. You go through multiple background checks and evaluations after that fact to ensure that you are suited for the job. And so I was finishing out my last year in graduate school. And at the same time, I was going through this very rigorous process that after you pass the exam, you think that you get to go home and celebrate, but you don't. I was taken up to a small room upstairs and I was met by an former FBI agent. And he grilled me for about an hour with questions about my life and where I lived and who I knew. And then that process continued for the next 6 months while I received my top secret security clearance. So it was definitely an adventure, especially at a really young age. I think I was 23 or 24 when I joined the Foreign Service. And then I was assigned to the US Embassy, London. And it was an incredible experience. I'm so honored to be able to have served my country in that way. But again, like I said, life is all about iterating. So I had the experience. I loved it. But I knew deep down inside of me that there were other things in life that I wanted to do.
We're talking to Christina here on Refocused Radio. And to touch on that experience even more, that opened a new chapter for you to experience something that a lot of Americans don't get to experience. So with that said, what was it like to be in the field doing your job? And what's something that you took away from that experience that you appreciate?
Representing something bigger than yourself, I think was the best part of the experience for me, and understanding what that really means. When you are a diplomat, you are always representing the US government, the State Department, 24/7. And I think that's probably how a lot of professional athletes feel. Like they're never just themselves. They always have to be representing something greater. They always have to mind their P's and Q's and be mindful of their behavior because people are watching. And that's definitely how I felt as a diplomat, was that you kind of always have to be a little bit on guard and be very, very aware that it's not just about you now. It's about something much larger than that. So that was a really profound experience, especially for, a young person. I think there were so many things about the job that I loved. I think meeting other diplomats and engaging in international diplomacy was something that I had dreamed of for a lifetime. And I think that the really difficult thing, though, was just this idea of being away from home and my family and my friends for the lifetime of my career. And I think at that age, I just wasn't ready to do that, for the next 20 or 30 years of my career. And so that's really what brought me back home. But also, this idea that I have always been a creative person. And I think it's tough to be creative in government work. It's just not built that way. And so I knew I wanted to do something that was a little bit more creative. And that's when I went back to school. So I had already had the master's in international relations, and I went back and I studied design at FIDM, the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising. And that was an incredible experience for me. And then I later went on to teach there. And, I learned so much from that experience. I think it's so important that people realize that learning can happen in so many different arenas and industries, and everything is an opportunity to learn.
And you make it look easy. I mean, I know it's the opposite, but what was your mindset throughout your whole career and after your time serving as a diplomat? Because when you go back to school and you start that creative process of, getting to the fashion and all that, what was your daily routine as far as inspiring yourself to keep pushing forward and not settling for, just anything?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because I do think that having a routine and having a really good sense of what your priorities are and what your goals are is so important. And the first chapter of my book, actually, Get the Degree Without Losing Your Mind, is about that very process of deciding what's important to you. Why are you even doing what you're doing? Why are you pursuing a degree or a certificate or taking that class at night? And knowing your why is really essential, because learning isn't easy. It's really hard. And I think people feel very vulnerable when they learn something new, because there's always that question of, will I get it? Will I understand this? What if I don't get it? Then what? What if I'm the only person that doesn't understand? And I think that sometimes with learning something new, there's a lot of fear that comes with it. So I think inside yourself, knowing your why are you doing this? You have to have that inner sense of motivation, that intrinsic motivation that propels you through those really difficult times when it does get tough and, it's late at night and you have to finish a paper or study for an exam or whatever the case may be. So I think, that was one thing for me, is just having a really strong sense of purpose, why I was doing what I was doing. That was really helpful to me.
In your book, once again, I want to remind the audience, it'll be available in New Year of 2024, January 30th, 2024. But you can pre-order it on Barnes & Noble. The title of the book is Get the Degree Without Losing Your Mind, The Busy Student Schedule to Study Hacking. And speaking of study hacking, to your point earlier, students have really been busy with a lot of distractions. I mean, I remember growing up, we didn't have that much distractions, but now it's like wherever you look, wherever you turn, there's something trying to grab your thoughts and grab your eyes. So in the book, when it comes to the different techniques you have for just retaining information and study tips and concentration and focus, what's some of the skill sets people can appreciate when they read this book?
I'm so glad you asked. I have a chapter that's called Biohacking for Scholars. And, biohacking has been a big buzzword lately, but what people don't realize is that, I think people forget that our brain is a part of our body. And so how we take care of our bodies impacts how well we think, how well we focus, and how well we remember things. And so basic ideas like just getting enough sleep, that's the foundation of cognition. So that's one of the tips in the book is get really good sleep, get consistent sleep. That's number one. Nutrition is really, really important just to keep your brain functioning at a high level. So I give tips on the type of foods you should eat that can enhance your cognition, have been shown to improve memory. Blueberries, after I did this research and I realized, wow, blueberries are these incredible superfood that actually help people remember things better. Studies have shown that they help people remember things better. So that became a staple in my diet after I read that. But, there's all sorts of tips on the foods you can eat. But what some people don't realize is that you can actually build your focus muscles the same way you build your muscles at the gym. And one great way to do that for your mind is through meditation. And I discovered meditation several years ago when I had a really, really stressful job and I needed to stay focused at work, but I was under a lot of pressure. And it was kind of one of those more, toxic environments where not good vibes happening. And that was really distracting to me and distressing to me. And so it was hard to stay focused because, emotionally, it was a tough place to be in. It was mentally challenging, the work that I was doing, but at the same time, I had to keep my cool and stay very poised and focused on my work. And up until that point in my life, I thought meditation was just this kind of hippie granola LA thing that people said worked, and I didn't really believe in it. But I got to that point in my life where meditation became essential. It was as essential as my breath. And I was meditating 20 minutes in the morning before work. I'd meditate after work just to kind of decompress from the experience. And then I would meditate before bed to help me go to sleep so that I wouldn't have that experience of my mind racing and being up all night. And so meditation is such a profound tool in your toolbox to help you build that muscle of focus. And any adult learner, any student can start with 2 to 5 minutes a day. I use, different apps. There's an app called Calm that I really like. And it's has some free features. You can just set a timer for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Start with 2 minutes. Sometimes when I feel really stressed and I just need to get focused really quick, I will set that timer on the app for 2 minutes. You hear some ambient music and I will just clear my mind, focus on my breath. And then I can emerge from that experience and I have a clear mind. I'm ready to give a presentation or lead a meeting or whatever the case may be. So that's one of the tips in the book that you'll see again and again is this idea of meditation to build your focus muscles. Another great one that people don't realize the connection is gratitude, because gratitude puts us in this alpha mind state. And that state is perfect for learning. It primes your mind for receiving information and for being creative. So something as simple as a daily gratitude practice can actually help you learn better.
And speaking of learning better, the point with being both out of the classroom and in the classroom, real life versus, your academic life, there's a common thread: pressure, and how you deal with pressure with your own experience and how you also illustrate in the book. How have you been able to use pressure as a good thing versus a thing that makes you stop and stall and collapse?
That's such a great question. In the book, I have a section on what I call a stress rehearsal. And I think it's helpful in the workplace and in academic life in school. And when I worked for the State Department, you'd be in high pressure situations. You could have, some really scary things happen in U.S. embassies. There's bombings and there's threats and really terrible things. So to help us prepare for this, we would do what I call a stress rehearsal, where we would practice these crisis management situations. So they'd group us together. They'd give us a scenario. They'd put the timer on. And we would have to come up with a solution in this short period of time. We'd have to work together. We'd have to keep our cool. And I think that practice of crisis management is something that large companies, organizations like the State Department, they do this to help prepare people for when the real time comes. And when you do have a crisis at the embassy and you have to evacuate, going through that process of practicing helps you stay cool in the moment. And so I give the same advice to students in my book. And I say, if you have test anxiety, the best thing that you can do is do practice tests. when you're at home, set the timer because you're only going to have a certain amount of time to take a test in the classroom. So put that pressure on yourself first. Do practice tests and don't look at your notes. Don't look at your textbook. Go through the experience multiple times. And the more you do that, the more comfortable you get mentally and emotionally with stress and with pressure. I remember when I was a young girl, I used to play the piano. And when you're a child and you have to perform in front of an audience, that's a really scary thing to put on, a 5, 6, 7-year-old. And I remember that I would be sitting in the pews of this. It was this big church that we used to have our recitals in. And I would be shaking. I'd just be so nervous about having to go up there and perform. And the thing that really helped me was before the day of the recital, I would go into that giant room with the really big grand piano. And for a week, I would just practice and I would walk from my seat to the piano because I didn't want to trip on the carpet. And I just wanted to be aware and be able to control everything that was in my power to control so that I could be calm and relaxed when the big day came. And so that in my mind is a stress rehearsal, was going through the motions, practicing whatever the thing is, whether you have to give a presentation at work or at school, but just doing it so many times that eventually it becomes automatic. And something else I talk about in the book is just creating habits. So you want to make things automatic. And the way you do that is you just rehearse and you practice over and over again until it gets easy. And, I'm sure you have experience being a podcast host. This probably is a lot easier for you now than it was at the beginning because you practiced so much. And for somebody who's just starting out, they may be really nervous about interviewing a guest for the first time. So practice makes perfect when it comes to relieving stress.
It's funny you say that because you mentioned earlier about meditation. And I have so many mentors who helped me along the way. And one of my secret sauce is breathing. People underestimate the power of just pausing and taking a breath. Because when you do that, the guest it's like playing catch in the backyard. It's hard to play catch if someone doesn't throw the ball back or if you don't throw the ball. So it's not just an art, but it's a proven system, if that makes sense. And I'm sure you explore that in your book and also in your professional life. How have you been able to use and develop systems that you can maintain and upgrade as you move up your career?
That's just such a great note about breath. I actually talk about breath work in that biohacking chapter because you actually can calm your nervous system down by breathing in the right way. And so we talk about it's a sigh. It's basically 4 counts to inhale, 8 counts to exhale that will immediately calm your system down. So that's a skill that students, that professionals can use in those high pressure situations. But in terms of systems, I think what I provide in this book, Getting the Degree Without Losing Your Mind, are tools that students can use to compose their own systems. And so one chapter of the book is on time management. So I map out for any learner, professional, I tell them how I organize my time on a daily and weekly basis. And I give different methods of time management so that people can come up with their own system. I know what works for me, but in this book, I really like to give people just a toolkit of different options that they can use to be more effective and more efficient with their time. And especially those hacks too. It's kind of like a grab bag of try all the hacks and then figure out what works best for you.
Once again, listen to Refocused Radio talking to Christina. You can get her book that's coming out next year, January 30th. And it is available anywhere you can get a book, but you can pre-order right now on barnesandnoble.com. And I'll have all the details in the show notes. But the book is Get the Degree Without Losing Your Mind, The Busy Student's Guide to Study Hacking. This is something I wish I would have read when I was in school. So that tells you a lot.
Me too.
When you look back at all you achieved throughout your higher education, I mean, you have multiple degrees. So you are used to the challenge that academics will present itself to a person. What is the best process for you when you reevaluate how you finish your goals as far as like graduation and using these degrees to further your career? What has been the favorite, basically I'm trying to say, what has been the favorite part looking back, realizing, man, I survived these crazy battles?
I talk about higher education as being the best and worst of times. And I think that's because, for reasons we talked about, learning is hard and it can be really stressful. And I recall times on, all of my degrees where I felt stretched to my limits. Mentally, I felt challenged. Physically, I was tired because, I'd probably been up all night studying. And there's just a lot of things that I think studying and learning new things causes a lot of stress. But at the same time, I also recall these moments as the best times in my life because, through my studies, through my education, I was also connected to this community of like-minded people and fellow learners and individuals. And I think I've met some of my closest friends and lifelong friends through this experience of learning and, professors that I still keep in touch with to this day. So I think the reason that I think higher ed is still relevant today, even in a world where we can get so much information online, is because the heart of learning and of education is the idea of coming together as a community of learners, being with like-minded people, spending time, having intellectual debates with your peers and hearing from the knowledge and expertise of others. And I think it's that experience. I think it's that experience of community with others that draws people to places of learning and of higher education. So when I look back on the degrees, that the thing that I take with me isn't just the learning experience. It was the people that I met through the process. And, I said this at the beginning, but I'll say it again, that learning, it's not just about the words on a page or the words in a textbook. It's about the holistic experience. And that's what I try to convey in this book, Get the Degree Without Losing Your Mind, is that as a learner, if you want to achieve your best, you have to pay attention to your mind, your body, and your spirit if you want to perform at a high level in any arena. So I think for me, I'm always thinking about, it was really just the experience of the people that I met, the communities that I was able to connect with. That's what stands out for me the most, I think, throughout my career and through my education.
And like you said, your book, it has a holistic approach and focuses on, these four words: focus, concentration, productivity, and performance. And if you look at life, I'm not trying to compare apples and oranges, but in another perspective is your life. Like I had someone on the show talk about, it's your foundation, that builds your life. The house you build on is only as great as your foundation. So when you approach your guide to every class, it's like building your foundation from the beginning and not in the middle of the semester when it's crunch time.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
When you look at the opportunities that you've earned to be a leader in your community and to give back like you're doing with this book, what do you hope people will be able to just practice after they have read your book and use your guide and your tips?
What I want people to take away is this idea that effectiveness and success, however you want to define it, the true version of success in my mind is leading a life of balance. So it's not just about getting straight A's, is that it's not just about being successful in your career. It's about leading a lifestyle that brings you joy and that you can be proud of. And I think a huge part of the book is about helping students, any learner, find balance in their life. So I think that's what I would want for them to come away with the most is this is a system that will help you manage your work or your schoolwork so that you can do all the other things that are meaningful to you, like your spiritual practices, like spending time with your friends and your family, like engaging in your hobbies. And so this is a holistic approach because this isn't just about being more effective in your work or in school. It's about doing that so that you can have all of the other things that are meaningful and valuable to you in your life.
Well, pretty soon we're going to be getting close to Christmas, so I know a perfect present for anybody who is a senior in high school about to go to college. Get the book, get the degree without losing your mind, The Busy Student's Guide to Study Hacking. You can pre-order right now on Barnes & Noble. It'll be out January 30th, 2024. We've been talking to our guest today, Christina Lopez. I want to say thanks again for taking time, and what would you have call to action for people who wish to continue to support you?
I would just love for them to pre-order the book now wherever they get books. And, this book is great for any student, whether it be a college student, graduate student, but it's also a wonderful read for anybody, any adult who wants to learn something new or any adult who wants to perform at a higher level in their jobs and in their careers. I have a whole chapter on career development for people who are looking to change careers at any point in their life. So my call to action would be, do yourself a favor and pre-order the book today. I promise you will learn things that will just enhance your effectiveness and hopefully your joy in life.
Once again, listen on Refocused Radio, talking to Christina Lopez. I want to say again, y'all get the book, pre-order right now at barnesandnobles.com. And it's coming out, like I said, throughout the show. 2024. You won't miss it. January 30th, 2024. Once again, thanks to you, Christine, for your time.
Thank you.